Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Church Solutions Podcast. This is episode number 397, but hey, who's counting, right? My name is Phil Thompson.
And I'm Steve Lacy.
Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm doing just peachy keen.
Yeah, what are you up to?
No good.
Have a back-to-back to
Go,
back-to-back meetings, right?
going to meetings and
we've been
doing
having
podcasts. Yes.
we've been having meetings, a lot
One
of
of my
us here.
least favorite days is the ones filled with meetings. I like the ones when I look at the calendar, like, ooh, I can
Yeah.
just do stuff that's on my list, not stuff that other people need me to do.
Yeah, meetings sometimes they're essential, sometimes they're not. But I'm glad that we're doing today's podcast. Before we get to our guest, we have another webinar coming up. It is happening September 12th. It is happening 12 noon Eastern time. What's this webinar all about, and how can people be involved?
This next webinar is new technology to connect with your seniors. We have a special guest for bringing in a group that has been working with seniors for quite a while, and they've developed some technology that I think those that have seniors in their lives will be able to take advantage of. So,
all right. So it's some technology that is very simple for seniors to actually have. And we'll just tell you right now, we're working with a company called ViewClicks that we're doing this webinar on. So it's a free webinar. You can sign up by going where?
going to webinar.streamingchurch.tv.
Webinar.streamingchurch.tv. Sign up. It's free. It'll be about a half hour. We'll have some Q&A, but I think this is a great little tool here. What I think a lot of people will really like, especially if you have seniors in your life.
And
like,
it's now more of a ministry tool as well. So it applies to the ministry, and ministries can use this to
yeah,
reach their seniors in their group.
Yeah, it's a great tool to reach your seniors. And I get I get triggered now when we start talking about seniors. I don't know why that is, but
Hey, I get to go to a movie with my son, and I got the senior discount. It wasn't much, but it was worth a couple of bucks to me. I was like, wow.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
All right, where did the time go? All right, well, our next guest, I'm going to introduce him. I'm going to read his bio. He might be as old as me, maybe older. He's been involved in the AV industry for over 40 years, and much of that has been involved in working with church AV. He's filled many roles over the years, as I have, from integrator to engineer to manufacturer to rep to business owner. He's done a great deal of live events and touring, as well as working with design and engineering, sales, integration, training, worship leader. He's also the owner of Dynamic Audio Visual Systems. And James Denman is our guest today. James, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing well. So how old are you?
How old do you think I am?
Well, if you've been doing stuff for 40 years, you've got to be close to my age.
I'm 55 this year, but
You're 55.
I started pretty young.
Wow. Yeah, so okay. Well, I was going to say you don't look old, but I thought, this guy must be my age, but you're not. You're younger than all of us.
Mess around. Phil is not shy.
I cheat a little bit on the numbers. Probably. I started working audio in my church when I was like 12 or 13.
Yeah.
So I kind of go back to that point and just kind of realized I had a little bit of a gift for it at that point.
My son was, I think, 6 or 7 when he started doing audio for his children's church.
Nice.
The church I pastored. And then when we moved back here to Tucson, he helped run sound here for the adults. But anyhow, so that's a legitimate stat. That's legit,
At our church, we've got a guy that runs the web soundboard, and he's probably 12. That's my guess. Yeah.
I tell you, that's a great job. Very good place to start, really, is start them young. The kids, and teenagers particularly, they can pick up so quickly on this technology because they've never known anything else. And whereas, guys our age, it wasn't quite this way when we were coming up.
Yeah, so, you're right. Yeah. All right. So what we thought we would talk about today are some things churches should understand about audio for in-house as well as streaming video. And I said too, when we were talking about this earlier, I said 5 things, but we've got about a half hour here, so we could do 5, we could do 10. But I thought it would be good that we talk a little bit about that, because I have found we do streaming video. Our company is streamingchurch.tv, among other things that we do. But I've always said audio is just as much important, maybe even more important in some ways than video.
Sure.
Because if people can't understand what you have great video, but if your audio is not good, people are not going to stick around. So that's the idea of today's podcast. So I'll let Steve Lacy kind of kick us off.
Let's.
He likes to ask questions.
I don't know if I'm being redundant, but I thought I might ask the same question to another guest at one time, but maybe it's a different arena. But what are the most common mistakes churches are making with their audio? Where do you see the biggest problems?
Okay. That's a little hard to say what the biggest problems are. I'm going to start by saying just training in general. It's not uncommon at all to just take the first person that is willing to do it and throw them behind the mixing console. And in some cases, that's perfectly fine. If you're in a small church where you have a piano and an organ, and there's no mic on the organ, of course, and there's a mic on the piano and a mic on the pastor, and that's it. That's fairly easy to do. But if you're in an environment where you are doing a contemporary style with a full band, you definitely need to have somebody who's got a little training under their belt and understands how to do it.
So we were meeting in a school for a while, and we were stopping out with whatever, unload the trailer, and somebody said, we need a sound guy. And I go, well, I guess I can be taught to do the sound. And after like 1 or 2 Sundays, they said, we don't need you anymore. And I think I did.
I hope they were nice, at least.
I was in broadcasting for a long time. And in fact, at one of the churches I was at, I was still in broadcasting. And they asked me one time, but you're in radio. You should be able to mix sound. I'm like, no.
Yeah, because I think what the deal was, I didn't have the ear for it. And you talk about training, but isn't there, I have a son who's a musician, and he definitely has the ear for it. Whereas I'd be listening and go, more cowbell.
Right. Well, and it's funny that you mentioned a musician, because that was kind of going through my head. Just because you're a musician doesn't necessarily mean you have the ear to mix live sound or broadcast, for that matter. Musicians tend to put their instrument prominently in the mix. I'm a bass player, so I'm guilty of that as well. Sometimes putting a little, mixing a little bass heavy, but that's where part of the training comes in. If you have somebody that is a musician, should have a pretty good ear, but then teaching them how to do the balance, the balancing act that you have. One of the things with church music in particular is the only thing that really makes it Christian music is the lyrics. So they have to be on top, but they can't be so far up that it sounds unnatural with the rest of what's coming from the stage. And so it just, some people have a natural ability to do that, but it does just take time, experience, training to learn how to meet that balance,
It's interesting. You mentioned you play bass. We have video switching now, and I'm a video switcher, and we just started a new role for director. And it's interesting because the director goes keyboard shot. And then I'm realizing he plays keyboards.
Yeah.
So he's very interested in those keyboards, where the keyboard shot is not a very great shot in my opinion, but anyway, it's
depends
kind of
on
funny.
the keyboard player, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because he's like, yeah, if he was a drummer, it'd probably be something else, but yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
And what are some other things here we can?
Well, along with that training, I think one of the primary things that people misunderstand or fail to understand is equalization. And what that is, just for a brief explanation, is across the frequency band, you can adjust higher or lower individual frequencies to make whatever instrument, voice, whatever's coming through the system sound natural and sound as it should, or fit into your mix. So there's a lot that goes into that. I think one thing I hear more than anything else is it's just too loud. And what I find 90% of the time is it's not really too loud. It's not equalized properly. And so when the EQs are bad and the voices sound like this, or you're trying to get them to cut through the mix and they're EQ'd wrong, then it gets painful and it can truly hurt your ears and not be all that loud. So it's sort of like the argument of what's the difference between music and noise. Kind of depends on who you are.
Yeah.
So EQ and something. So I mean, all right. So I'm listening to this. I'm a pastor or an associate pastor, and I'm listening to this podcast. So I should make sure everything's EQ'd. I mean, is there a school for that? How do I learn how to EQ? Are there YouTube videos? I mean, should we just call you?
I'm pretty sure I could learn to do brain surgery on YouTube. So there are YouTube videos. My recommendation is sit down at your mixing console and just play with it. Take a channel, take a microphone, and turn the knobs and see what they do. And that's the best way, I believe, to really learn real time what turning this knob is going to do. People get afraid of it, and I understand that, because you certainly don't want to do that in the middle of your worship service and then get yourself in a position where you don't know how to get out of it. There's some beauty to digital mixing consoles in that you can always go back. You can hit recall and go straight back. But yeah, you've got to get in there and kind of mess with it. I have over the years developed some basic things that I always do, which we probably don't want to go into here because it's a lot of techie talk, but that I always do when I sit down at the mixing console for the first time, as far as equalization goes. Another point to that is when you have a system installed, or if you have your system tuned up, have somebody come and take a look at it, have them do an overall system EQ makes a big difference. If it's EQ'd to the room, then the individual channel EQs can be a whole lot easier. If you're trying to fight against the system itself in the room, you're fighting a losing battle.
Yeah, I've been in those battles before. I understand.
Yeah. Your comment about that it's too loud and that it's typically the EQ, that really hits home with me, because I remember, well, a couple of things. I went to, I told you I got into this movie at a discount here, and as I first got in the movie, I'm like, this thing is just so loud. It's annoying, just the sound effects and stuff. But then as I got involved with the movie, all that went away. I didn't realize they didn't turn it down. I'm sure it may have even gotten louder. I went to saw Gran Turismo, so a lot of car sounds and stuff. And initially I was just, but when you're in the moment, it just kind of moves you along. So I kind of, and then I remember had an old boss that I invited to my church. He was coming into town, and they were holding their ears, and it was really, I thought, just really loud. And I actually talked to the sound guy, like, why is it so loud? And now I'm realizing, I think it wasn't any louder because our sound guy, he's got a decibel meter thing that's sitting on the desk up there. And I'm sure everyone that comes and runs sound says, don't let it get over. Well, what's the number? Tell me what's a reasonable number for church service. I guess it depends on the type of music, right?
And it depends on the venue as well. If you're in a really reverberant room, a cathedral, you really can't get it too loud, because with all of the reverberation, it will overwhelm the space and it'll get to the point that it's just saturated. So you have to keep the levels down. Contrasting that, I used to attend a church that for a while met in a movie theater, and movie theaters tend to be very, very dead spaces acoustically. So we would do the whole thing you were talking about, come in, set up on Sunday morning and set up the stage and set up the sound system and all of that. And I could run 110 decibels in there because we had a good sound system. We had it EQ'd properly, good equipment all the way across the board. And it was not painful at all. Now, I didn't run 110 all the time, but I could easily run 100 with no problem at all. And nobody ever complained about it being too loud because of the space. So it's hard to say a specific decibel level. The church that I attend now and where I mix, they want us to stay around 90, but I've been known to push that a little bit. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way I've set the console up, and I'm able to get away with it a little bit.
So give us references, and because my range was off, I think.
Okay.
Rock concert, jet taking off. What do you know those levels? Or
typical just speech, if I'm sitting talking to you across the table having coffee, is going to be around 65 to 70 decibels.
Oh, okay.
Jet taking off is probably, they say the threshold of pain is around 120. I think the loudest sound ever recorded, at least created by a human being, was the space shuttle taking off. And I forget what the decibel level was there. It was like 160, 170. Very, very high. So that's kind of your range. Rock concerts, I feel like they mix them way too loud, because you can certainly damage people's hearing. And sometimes they approach the 120 level. So,
we were at my church. I'm retired now, but I was the executive pastor, and we did this was just a few years ago. We ran into that kind of controversy again. It's too loud, it's not loud enough. And I looked up what Disney World was doing. And I think it was like around 79 decibels, if I can't remember exactly. It might have been 79, might have been 89. I don't know. But we basically used that as a guide.
Right.
And it made everybody seem pretty happy with that, whatever it was. I don't know what they were doing, but
and a lot of that does just absolutely depends on your space.
Right.
And your crowd too. I mean, you have to take into account, who your audience is. And the way I always approach being a mix engineer is, I look at it, now I have a musical background, but I look at it sort of like playing an instrument. And my job is to interpret what the people on the platform are doing, to interpret that for the audience. So that takes into account volume, how you're mixing the different instruments, how you're doing equalization. So I'm very active when I mix. I really hate to see somebody stand there with their arms folded the entire service and never touch anything.
Yeah, because songs are different. Songs come off different, different instruments, different vocals. Every song can be a little different, especially if you're talking a band,
So are you tweaking to experiment? Do you let's bring this treble up a little bit on the
No, I'm typically not tweaking that. I'm doing more, I'm like a fader jockey, moving the faders up and down. So you're bringing, let's say you get to the point where the guitar has a lead that he's playing, bring it up a little bit, bring it back down, mixing the vocals. If there's really rich harmonies, you may want to, bring in the harmony parts a little bit. Effects, I like to use a lot of delay on vocals. It can be used to great effect, but you don't want to use it all the time. So you bring it in at the end of a phrase, you take it out for the rest of the phrase, so that the vocal is very clear, but it has a little sparkle to it as well. So there's a lot involved. Certainly you don't have to do all these things to have a good mix and to make it sound good, but those things just add to it and come with experience and going back to the training portion.
Yeah, so you mentioned, so if I'm if I had spent my 2 weeks and they didn't fire me, but I wanted to get better, you said you can learn to do brain surgery on YouTube. Is there introductory things that people should learn versus intermediate things that people should know versus advanced things people should know? Or how do you walk somebody along that path? Or
I would say the first thing to approach, if you're trying to look at YouTube, is whatever piece of equipment you're trying to learn about, specifically search for that. So I know there are tutorials for every mixing console that's on the market, there's tutorials about microphones and direct boxes, probably cables. I've never checked to see, but learn how to use the mixing console that you're standing behind for sure. And their tutorials start from the very beginning, from setting it up, taking it out of the box and turning it on, to more intricate routing and equalization and all that sort of thing, because every console is a little bit different. And I know for a fact that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of videos on YouTube going through those processes. There are also organizations that are dedicated to training church tech folk. So they're worth having a look at as well. Something we do as well. And it's nice to be able to set up on a Saturday morning, bring in breakfast and coffee, and just go through a session teaching people how to use the equipment that they have there in their individual church.
Okay. So getting back to these 5 elements, what's the next one on our list here?
That's a good question. I've got a list here. The first one I had on my list actually was what you buy matters. And what I meant by that is that everything in the chain makes a difference. So it starts with your microphone or your direct box or your cable, depending, or your instrument for that matter. And if you're not providing a good source material, when it comes out the other end of the speakers, there's not much you can do with it. If what I'm getting as an engineer is not a good source, I can't fix that. I can't make it good if it's not good to begin with. I might be able to make it better, but I can't make a poor singer sound good.
And people have used that as an example for that too in the past.
Oh, have they?
but I digressed. Go ahead. Yeah.
Right. So, and that's not to say that you need to spend, top dollar on everything that you buy, but you do need to evaluate and make sure that you're getting good quality equipment. One of my biggest headaches these days as a business owner is, and it's happened a lot recently, I'll have someone call me and say, "Hey, we bought this stuff. Can you come install it?" And, okay, sure, we'll do that. But 99% of the time, I have to explain to them why this is not really the correct product for what they're trying to accomplish. Just an example, this has nothing to do with sound, but a customer of mine had regular stage lighting, incandescent stage lighting, and they wanted to upgrade to LED. So instead of calling me and saying, "Hey, how do we go about doing this?" they just bought it online. And we're told that it's a direct plug and play replacement for what you have. And that was not the case at all. And see that with audio, people tend to think that, oh, we can just throw speakers up. Doesn't matter where they go. It doesn't matter what brand they are. Doesn't matter, what the specs are on the equipment.
Are there suites of equipment that play well together? That
certainly there are, but and some of that is affected by your space and what you're doing for sure. If you're talking about just speech, that's one thing. If you're talking about a full band, that's something else entirely.
Yeah. So we get the same thing here. We do streaming video, and we get churches that will buy other equipment. We have recommendations on our website, and we always are available, but people buy something and go, "Hey, how do I make this work?" And you're looking at it going, "Okay, that's probably not the best thing. That's not something I would buy."
Right. But how can I make it work? Right. That's part of the job.
Yeah.
So are there things, what I'm trying to get at is, all the way from the instrument to the speaker, there's a chain of things going on. And if I invest in, I spend all my money on the speaker and I assume people make mistakes of investing in components along that flow that aren't going to work well in that flow, or not, or I'm going to spend a bunch of money. It's not going to make any difference at all.
Right.
How do you look at that, and how do you make that evaluation, on the what to buy thing? A lot of it would be determined on what you already have, right? Outside of what you're looking to replace.
Absolutely.
Is there a heart in here that's got to be that, does the soundboard, is that the heart of the whole thing? And how does all that,
what's the main piece?
What's the main piece? And if I spend a bunch of money, I should spend it on this.
Right. If you're going to spend a bunch of money, first of all, can I give out my phone number? No, I can't say for sure that there is one specific piece. I mean, the main pieces that you have in your system are the input, the pass through, and the output, right? So you have your input being your microphone, your instrument, your direct boxes. There's been really great advancement in microphone technology in the past decade or so that has brought the cost down significantly. You can actually buy a fairly inexpensive microphone that sounds pretty good these days. That wasn't always the case. And that's a good thing. The same can be said for mixing consoles. You can still spend a couple $100,000 on a mixing console if you want to. The vast, vast, vast majority of churches are not going to do that, and they don't need to. The technology has gotten better and the price has gotten lower, and that's a very good thing as well. The first thing I would say do before you make a big investment is talk to a professional. That's the easiest way to answer that question, because I can't say there's one brand that you should buy over everything else. Or there's one component. One thing we certainly try to do, because every church is dealing with a budget, right? And many of those churches' budgets are not large. So if you have equipment that is functional and can function in the system as it should, then we want to make use of that. And sometimes you come across a situation where someone in the past made a purchase that was a very good purchase, and that's still a good product and still can be utilized, even if it's, aging, sort of like we were talking about ourselves. They can make use of us. So I hate to dance around. I'm not really trying to dance around the question, but I can't pinpoint one particular piece of equipment that's going to be important, the most important, because they all work together. And it's one thing we try to emphasize a lot is that what we design is not a group of components, but a system that will work together and do what it is it's designed to do. Ultimately, if that's done correctly, the end product is easy to use. Whereas if it's not done correctly, then it can be very difficult to use in a satisfactory manner.
Yeah. So in other words, one size does not fit all. And
that's correct.
Things that you've mentioned since the very beginning here, James, is, what's your facility like? What's your space like? What's the genre of the music?
Mm-hmm.
All those kind of things factor in. So guess what? We're out of time, but we can carry on, and we can do this another time. We can keep going here. But James, I want people we're talking with James Denman here. How can people get a hold of you? You were talking about consultant expert. Well, you're an expert. So how can people get a hold of you?
Well, they can go to our website at dynamicavsystems.com. You can email me directly at james@dynamicavsystems.com. Or our phone number. We're in the Atlanta area, 770-910-2831. We're happy to talk with you regardless of where you are in the country. We've done work. Gosh, I was counting it up the other day in something like 30 states at this point. Wow. So we're focused primarily on the Southeast, but we'll travel wherever we're needed.
Okay. And you could do some things with Zoom probably, and
absolutely
coach some people through some things with equipment, those kind of things. So I think that would be good. Audio is just so important, because if people are not having a good experience sound wise, it's just
very uncomfortable.
It's just yeah, exactly. It's uncomfortable, and it just does not make for a good experience. All right. Well, I'm sorry we're out of time here, but we definitely need to have you on again.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah, and again, if you miss some of that and you're driving on the road, you can always reach out to us. We can connect you up with James Denman. Just send us an email, support@streamingchurch.tv, or just visit streamingchurch.tv. That's what we do here, and we can there's a chat box and all that stuff. So a lot of good things going on here. This has been great, very helpful information, and I think our people are going to get a lot out of this. And so, James, we really do appreciate your time here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to meet you guys, and I hope I didn't talk too techie the whole time.
No, I thought it was good. I think it's good information, and again, you're available as a resource for people, and that's kind of what we do here. We like to connect people up with resources and do that as well. So, all right. So, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time today. And most of all, we sure appreciate our listeners or viewers, depending on what platform you're watching us on. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of time here with this episode. My name is Phil Thompson. We'll catch you again next time on another episode of the Church Solutions Podcast. Please take care of yourselves and each other.